How are we? My name is Stacy Harath. I'm Executive Assistant for the University Libraries to the Dean. I would like to thank all of you for being here tonight. This is a special treat, special event, and I know you're going to enjoy it greatly. I want to thank Hillel for this opportunity to work together and bring this event to you. And I also want to give a special thanks to Ruth Minsky Sender for being available tonight to share her life experiences with each and every one of us. So without further ado, short and sweet, I'm going to turn it over to Alona Fenn.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello everyone, welcome, and thank you for coming today, a day known to Jews around the world as Yom HaShoah, or in English, Holocaust Remembrance Day. This program is a collaboration between Aisim Shalanu, the Israeli-American Council, JSA, the Jewish Student Association, SFI, Civils for Israel, Hillel, and Stony Brook University Libraries. I would like to recognize some of the people who worked with me on this program, which is the last program of 3 days series. Bianca Benayoun, Steph Novotny, Naomi Glock, Elijah Har, Jennifer Hendel, and Ophir Sabah. I would like to invite Elijah to present some statistics that were compiled by Naomi Glock, and we hope they will enlighten you.
Good evening. I would like to thank you all for coming here. When we come to the issue of Holocaust statistics, I feel it is important to remember, and I start with the first quote here, that sometimes we view a single death as a tragedy, where 1 million deaths we view only as a statistic. And can you all hear me? Okay, thank you. In terms of during the Holocaust, over 6 million Jews were killed, and over 16 million other people. If we compare this to the total undergraduate or graduate student or complete student body at Stony Brook currently, that is 614 times the number of total students present at Stony Brook. If we compare it to merely the undergraduate student body, that's 921 times the total undergraduate students. I'll first touch on numbers and names, the harsh reality of human defacement. Your name is unique. It ties you to your family, to your relationships. It ties you, in essence, to an identity of who you are. And I don't believe it's inconsequential that at times the name of a person was taken away and it was replaced by a number during the Holocaust. And numbers are not personal. And I would contend that there are realms in which the laws of mathematics do not apply. They're superseded by higher laws. And one of these laws is the law of personal relationships. On this higher, and I'll quote F.W. Borg, on this higher plane of human sentiment and experience, the laws of mathematics collapse completely. I am certain that no couple from whose clinging and protecting arms their child is mismatched will find comfort in the assurance that 1 from 3 leaves 2. In the great crises of life, one's faith in figures breaks down hopelessly. So, in terms of, first of all, that as a person comes into the world, you always come into the world within a familial setting, regardless of how that family may be composed. And one of the great things about a family is you are known and hopefully loved. But your family knows you. They know you unlike any other person knows you. And you experience life in a different way when you're around them, when you're with them. And from the first human interactions with your family, you develop a value of relationship. And from this you can develop a personal identity within a hopefully secure environment. And then moving out from your family, oftentimes we'll make choices throughout life to associate with people. And we would consider these people our friends. And from this sense of friendship. We develop values of communities, a sense of being, a sense of purpose, surrounding, moving from an individual sense of value and being to a familial sense of value and being to a communal sense of value and being. And then we move beyond that to a corporate identity. And each one of us have different cultural, ethnic identities which shape us in different ways. And from this comes our sense of humanity. We begin to recognize that there's not just a me, there's also an us and a we. And in terms of, I'll just very briefly touch on the definition of human life, because when you come to a situation in which you see life annihilated on a vast scale, I think it's important to remember the value of human life, in that, and these things are not 100% unique to humanity, but conscience, consciousness, and community. And I just want to touch very briefly on each of them. Conscience, in that humans uniquely experience a understanding of wrongness. Consciousness, we're uniquely aware of the ability to make choices. And community, we form very strong communities flowing from those other two principles. And fundamentally, a person is, within Judaism, a person is made in the image of God. Their life is sacred. There is a value there that is conferred by being made in the image of a creator. And this moves to the horror of redefined values. And I'll quote a doctor in psychology. When we present a man with the concept of man, which is not true, we may well corrupt him. When we present man as an automaton of reflexes, a bundle of instincts, a pawn of drives and reactions, as a mere product of heredity, environment, and instinct, we feed the nihilism to which modern man is, in any case, prone. I became personally acquainted with the latter stage of that corruption in my second concentration camp, Auschwitz. The gas chambers of Auschwitz were the ultimate consequence of the theory that man is nothing but the product of heredity and environment, as the Nazis like to say, of blood and soil. I am absolutely convinced that the gas chambers of Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Majdanek were ultimately prepared not in some ministry or other in Berlin, but rather at the desks and lecture halls of nihilistic scientists and professors. Viktor Frankl. And very consequential to this is that he's arguing that a philosophical viewpoint coming from desks and lecture halls ultimately led to the devaluation of human life. And in the next slide, we see some of the consequences of that. Now here we do have a camps-to-campus comparison, and I've only listed some of the major death camps and compared them to the total student body at Stony Brook in terms of the number of students' bodies that would have been annihilated at those camps, even though some of those camps were only operating for less than 4 years. So at Auschwitz-Birkenau, you had over 46 student bodies would have been completely annihilated. So if you think about that on a human level, that means every person here and every person who you've seen on this campus gone, times 46. And that means a lot more when you analyze and consider the value of human relationship. Because when one person is destroyed, it impacts so many others in very deep ways. There were over 40,000 camps, and 49% of millennials cannot even name one. Now many of these camps were smaller holding internment camps, holding several, or 100 to several hundred people. But it's still, I believe this statistic represents the scope of the Holocaust and how pervasive it was in German and German-occupied territories. Here we have the comparison of the total undergraduate student body to the ethnicities of people who were exterminated in the Holocaust. And if you look at the statistic, 37%, or just over 37% of the victims were of Jewish origin. So if you take 100 and subtract 37, that still leaves 63. When you devalue the human life of one group of individuals, ultimately this will have far more reaching consequences than maybe originally intended. And this leads us to the why of evil. The depravity of mankind is at once the most empirically verifiable reality, but at the same time the most intellectually resisted fact. There is within humanity the capability for evil, even though sometimes we don't like to acknowledge it. And I'll quote William Blake, "This life-dim windows of the soul distort the heavens from pole to pole, and goad you to believe a lie when you look with instead of through the eye." And speaking on this, a philosopher, Ravi Zacharias, wrote, "We were intended to look through the eye with the conscience. This culture asks us to look with the eye devoid of conscience." The creation of the sadistic. In order to have such genocide on a mass scale, it requires people to lose a sense of humanity. That requires lies. And the lies need to be both present and accepted. And this is illustrated by the first quote by Malcolm Muggeridge. The violation of the sacred. People do not believe lies because they have to, but because they want to. Now, fundamental to that is that people espouse ideologies because they believe it will benefit them. And I would encourage all of us to consider the costs of an ideology. The obligation of the singular. Ultimately, in standing against evil, it is each individual's duty. And with, as Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, silence in the face of evil is evil itself. Human life is sacred and precious. Seek to protect, preserve, and cherish it. Recognize dehumanization. Now, this always will come with a new moral definition of human life, oftentimes with a new legal definition. Be willing to look honestly at your culture and the cultures around you and ask where human life is being devalued. Speak for those who can. According to 2016, there are only 400,000 survivors left. I would encourage you, as you listen to one of these survivors here today, not only to listen with your ears, but also to listen through them with your conscience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elijah. That was very meaningful. Today we are honored to hear the story of Ms. Ruth Minsky Sender. Ruth is a distinguished writer, poet, and speaker. She was a Jewish educator for 27 years. She wrote 4 books, including The Cage, which is required reading for high school students across the United States. Ruth spoke in countless schools and other locations, and her goal has been to teach what hate, prejudice, and indifference is. We would like to hold a small ceremony in honor of Ruth's family that was perished during the Holocaust. These candles are lighted in honor. I would like to call Sam and Bianca to help me to hold the ceremony and kneel. These candles are lighted in honor of Ruth's mother, Nacha Minsky, Ruth's 3 brothers, Motala Minsky, Label Minsky, and Waishal Minsky. I would like to invite Nilda Gupta to read the Kaddish.
Everyone could just please stand and face the east for this prayer. I'm going to say it first in Aramaic and then in English. גדל וקדש לרבה, ועמד וברך חירותי, והמלך מלכותי, וחי חומר וימוכון, וחי תכל בית ישראל, והגנה בזמן קריב, ואמרו, אמן. איש מרבם ברוח לעולם על מעל מיה, ברך וישתבח ויתפאר ודרומה ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה, שמי תקודשה, וברכו. ולם כה בחטא ושירתה, תוש בחטא ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה, ואמרו אמן. איש למה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו על כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועמו amen. Exalted and hallowed be God's great name in the world which God created according to plan. May God's majesty be revealed in the days of our lifetime and the life of all Israel, speedily, imminently, to which we say amen. Blessed be God's great name to all eternity. Blessed, praised, honored, exalted, extolled, glorified, adored, and lauded. Be the name of the Holy Blessed One beyond all earthly words and songs of blessing, praise and comfort, to which we say amen. May there be abundant peace from heaven and life for us and all Israel, to which we say amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, to which we say amen. Thank you.
I'm sorry, please rise for a moment of silence. Let me see. Before the invasion of Poland, Ruth's older siblings fled to Russia to escape Nazi forced labor. When the Nazis invaded Poland, Ruth, her mom, and younger siblings were forced to live in the Lodz ghetto, where Ruth's younger brother Label contracted tuberculosis. On September 10, 1942, their mother was taken out of the ghetto during a Nazi raid, leaving Ruth to care for her younger brothers in the age of only 16 years old. Soon after, Label died of tuberculosis, and Ruth, Montale, and Moishale were rounded up with the other remaining Jews in the ghetto and sent to Auschwitz. Ruth and her brothers were separated at the gates of Auschwitz. She never saw them again. After a week, Ruth was transported to a labor camp in Mittelstein. There, she contracted blood poisoning from cutting her hand while under forced labor. Since her poems inspired others to hold on to life, she was hospitalized instead of killed. When she recovered, she was sent to the labor camp at Granford for the remainder of the war. The camp was liberated by Russian forces. Ruth finally got her wish to be free. She moved to the United States of America and started a family. Later, she started sharing her story in different newspapers and magazines. And as it was said before, Ruth wrote 4 books: The Cage, To Life, The Holocaust Lady, and While There Is Life. The Cage and To Life is going to be sold at the end of her talk and signed by Ruth. I'd like to let Ruth share her story.
My name is Ruth Minsky Sender. Notice that I emphasize Minsky. We take for granted what we have while we have it. As a child, I was born Riva Minsky. But when the Nazis came and I was sent to a camp, my name disappeared. I became number 55082. And if I forgot my number and I accidentally say my name during roll call, 400 girls would have been punished. So you had to try to forget your name. You remember you are numbered. You were parasite, you're nobody. Shaved head, dressed in the rags, and beaten daily. But somehow I survived to sheer miracles. Those who survived didn't survive because they were better or smarter. It just happened for one reason or another. I consider it all miracles. And therefore, when I say my name, I make sure that you remember how precious it is to have a name and be proud of whoever you are, where you come from. I was born in the city of Lodz, Poland. When the Nazis came in, I was 13 years old. Before the war, our lives were pretty normal as in other countries, depends on the living conditions. We had schools, we had libraries, we had schools of all different levels, we had teachers, we had a normal life, we had dreams and we had hopes. I always dreamt, I always hoped, I'll grow up, I'll become a teacher and I will write. I accomplished both of those goals, but the hard way and way later than it should have been done. We lived in Poland and we knew what was happening outside of Poland. We knew of Germany, we knew of Czechoslovakia and Austria, but still, first of all, the Polish government kept on telling us Poland is strong. Nothing could happen in Poland. It took only 1 week and there was no more Poland. And besides, Germany was so far away from us. Why did we have to worry? So we worried, but we still went on with life. But what hit us? In 1939, when the Nazis suddenly marched in, Lodz is a big industrial city in Poland. As soon as they marched in, they started beating up Jews. And first of all, they ordered that anyone who had a drop of Jewish blood is a Jew. A drop of Jewish blood made you a Jew. And as a Jew, you had to put on the Star of David and go into the area that was designated as a ghetto. There was the working class area of the city of Lodz, and I happened to live in that area. They also proclaimed that anyone who is German blood is a Volksdeutscher, a German outside of Poland, outside of Germany, in Poland now. And they had the power of life in death. And I learned the hard way how good people could be changed. If given power to good people, and if it suits them, they forget who they are and what they stand for. Where I lived in the area there was the landlady of that house that he lived. Her name was Frau Gruber. Mrs. Gruber. I knew she wasn't Jewish. Most of the people in that area was Jewish. We all spoke Yiddish. She spoke Yiddish. In fact, she knew more about Jewish customs than some of her tenants. She had a grandson who was my best friend. His name was Harry. We were both 13 years old. And shared the dreams for the future. That Harry was an only child, and I came from a family of 7. So Harry was the 8th child. He grew up in our house, spoke Yiddish, came with me to Jewish school to learn Jewish history, because he liked it. And we observed each other's holidays. We were best friends to sickness and in health. But now, Mrs. Gruber, who never talked about having German ancestors, remembered that she has German ancestors and she has power. And I called her grandma because she was Harry's grandma, so she was my grandma. And she went from house to best friends and neighbors, and took whatever she pleased from the closets, whatever she wanted. And I remember my mother standing there, and Frau Gruber putting precious belongings that didn't even belong to us. My uncle put it there for safekeeping while he escaped the Nazis. At least he thought so, he did. And my mother stood there and said, Frau Gruber, God will punish you for what you do to your Jewish friends and neighbors. And Frau Gruber turned around and said, Nacha, I could have killed you for that. And she could. She had the power to do that. And then she added, Nacha, Gott ist mit uns. God is with us. And my mother stood there helpless. And then she called out in Yiddish, A Welt mit Menschen wird nicht schweigen. A world full of people will not be silent. And she was wrong. The world was silent, and she was turned into ashes. We were put into the ghetto, and life in the ghetto, in order to learn or descend a little bit, there's a lot of literature, first-person stories. Please read them. My mother got a job before the war. She ran a factory she actually designed, created the small coats for small children, for small girls. And she was the only woman in that field. So now she was prominent in the ghetto, and she got a good position to start organizing factories, because everybody had to work in order to get working papers. And that was supposed to be the passport to freedom, not to be deported from the ghetto before they locked the ghetto. Afterwards, nothing could help you anyway. And in 1942, the head of Lodz Ghetto, the puppet head of Lodz Ghetto, Chaim Wonkowski, he was getting the orders from the Nazis. He was, many times he came to the ghetto back from the Gestapo, beaten up. But he had to pass out the orders. Came to the ghetto with tears in his eyes. And he said, Brüder and Schwester, brothers and sisters, give me your children. What do you mean, give me your children? He said he just came with terrible orders. The Nazis wanted 10,000 of our best, 10,000 children under 10, to be deported. The letters say to be killed, be deported, the sick children will get help, and the healthy ones will get easy jobs. Why do we have to deport it? Because they're useless, they can't work. But if they deport those children, they'll bring in other able-bodied people from other ghettos to work in the ghetto. And he cried, give me your children. Of course, we didn't want to give children. I was 13, so I was supposedly safe. But I had a little girl in Leibele who was sick. And the people didn't want to give their children. So the Nazis came in with guards and with help of the Jewish police, which again, I won't defend them, but we can't judge them, because they were giving lists of names of people that should be deported, and they have to bring those people to the station, to the trains. They didn't say to fancy, they just said to the train station. no catechized. But if they didn't bring those people, they would take their families, their children, their wives, their mothers. Who could judge? Do you know what you would have done under what circumstances? No, you don't. I could assure you, you don't. That's why I say I don't defend it. And they surrounded the ghetto. They went from house to house. And now they were looking not only for the sick or for the children, for the elderly, whoever they wanted. My mother decided that she's not going to send Bible out because she didn't trust them, what they're saying. So we lived on the ground floor, and there was like a hole in the ground, actually, where we kept potatoes and coals for the winter. Now, there were the coals, there were no potatoes, it was empty. And we put in blankets and pillows and put Bible inside that hole in the ground. And there was a trap door for the little, they called it a cellar, a basement sort of. And put the table over it, so when you came in, you didn't know that there's a hiding place there. And I pleaded with my mother to hide. And she said no. First of all, if you go out, my father died, I was 5 years old. There was an epidemic of typhus and he died very young. She said, if you go out, just children, without any adults, they're going to think that you're hiding somebody. That's dangerous. Besides, she felt so safe. She was young, she wasn't sick, she had excellent working papers. She was needed in the ghetto. So she felt that it's safer for all of us if she goes out with us. So we had Leibele, Motele, Moshel, and I, and my mother went outside. And she saw the guard looking towards the house. And she turned pale. And that was a death sentence. He screamed, she's sick, take it. And they took her away. I never saw her again. And I found out years later, after I survived and I was laying on the floor in the gym because I had no place to go, that the people taken out of that place, of Lodz Ghetto, in 1942 in September, were sent to a place called Chelno. It's in Poland. And that was the place where they had experimental gas chambers. They had trucks with the emblem of the Red Cross. So the people were told they're going in for a physical to see where they could work, what kind of work they could do, and just to go in there into the truck. There was the Red Cross on it. So they trusted, and they went in there. And then later they closed the trucks, they put in gas, and later cremated them. And those were the experimental gas chambers. And the Nazis figured out it doesn't work fast enough, doesn't fit in the plan. That's when they opened the gas chambers, Auschwitz and other places. And now, it was so many years later, so many tears later, there are those who tried to tell me that I'm a liar. The Holocaust never happened. The Holocaust deniers, they're still Nazis. I had a phone call from someone who introduced himself as a historian. He gave me a name, I'm sure it wasn't his name, and he said, did you write the cage? I said, yes. Can you assure me, it was very polite, can you assure me that everything in that book is true? I said, yes. Every word, every name, every event. It's my family, my friends, the people I grew up with, people I was always surrounded with. And he told me I had the cage in front of me, so I thought he was going to write a review or something. So I started telling him details about the ghetto and about Auschwitz. And then later about To Life, which talks about the people rising, the survivors literally rising from the ashes to start a new life. And I talked about the Holocaust lady, the scars that the children and now the grandchildren and great-grandchildren carry. And he listened very politely. And then suddenly he started screaming, "You are a liar. There was no Holocaust. There was no Auschwitz. There were no ghettos. You're lying about everything." I hung up because I saw who I'm dealing with. I was warned that I might get a phone call like that. A few days later, he called back again. And as soon as I answered, he started again screaming, "There was no Holocaust. You are a liar. You're lying about everything. I read all your books, your mother, about everything you lie." And that's when it got to me. There were no traces. At that time, I still believed that my mother was alive during the war. But now I knew she wasn't. There were no traces left of her. But he goes around and teaches, because I know some teachers that got that literature and they were exposed to his horrified words. Teach that the Holocaust never happened. And that's what scares me now. It's not easy to go on talking about things that are with me day and night. I write, I talk nightmares. But we have to learn what hate and prejudice and indifference leads to. Want to ask another question?
So at one point you left the ghetto, and did you know where you were going?
No, we did not. In the ghetto, we all had to work, and in order to get a bowl of soup, which was mostly water, and we all carried, whoever could get a job, could work, would get canteens, during lunchtime they would pour in some so-called soup, and that was the main meal. Now in the ghetto, after my mother was taken away, I suffered from malnutrition, and I couldn't walk. I was swollen. And my little brother was laying in the other bed, as he survived. We took him out of the hole of the ground, but he couldn't get to walk. He was too sick to walk. So we were allowed to stay in the ghetto, but we wouldn't get cut the rations. They figured your stuff slowly. And so my little brothers, Motala and Warshava, got jobs in the factories, and they would bring that bowl of soup. Instead, eating it themselves, they were dying from hunger, literally dying from hunger, and bring it to us and share it with us. In 1944, Hans Bibo, which was the Nazi commandant of that whole area, I'm happy to say that he was hung after the war. He came to the factories and made that now famous speech. I'm sure history books will have that speech. Meine Juden, my Jews, we all had to wait for him in front of the factory, he wouldn't dare go in. Meine Juden, I know meine Juden is my Jews. And I know that you don't know what's going on outside the ghetto. The Russian arena in Warsaw. And we want to save our labor. And not a hair is going to be touched on your head. Does it work? He said, not a hair is going to be touched on your head. Those are famous last words. If you look at the skeletons from the Auschwitz and all the other camps, all the hair was up. We all with a razor that went to the head. No, well, he said, not a hair is going to be touched on your head. And families stay together. And to show his good intentions to just move because to save the labor. To show his good intentions to get everybody a loaf of bread, which usually would be for a whole week. So people, when you look at those pictures, people going to Kenton, well, they didn't know where they're going. They didn't know that they're going to Auschwitz because we didn't know Auschwitz existed. We knew that there's some labor camps that they would take, deport people to labor camps. But we didn't know that Auschwitz existed. So if you see people, if you go to the museums, which I did already, and I had to stop whoever was showing the picture, because they showed pictures of, they're going to Auschwitz. I said, no, how did they know that? They didn't know they're going to Auschwitz. So that's misleading. The people didn't know where they were going. They didn't know of Auschwitz until after 3 days we came to Auschwitz and they opened the doors. A lot of people were there. There were 80 people in each wagon, in each cattle car. And we were greeted by our famous Dr. Mengeles. He was waiting for people to take, especially children, for experiments, for medical experiments. And so when we came out of the catechos, we were greeted by Mengele and people in striped uniforms. We didn't know what those uniforms were. First of all, we were startled because the sign like that lady pointed out, Arbeit macht frei. It means work makes you free. So when you come out and see that sign, what evil is that and work makes you free? No evil. But then those people in the striped uniforms started running around and speaking in Yiddish. Twins don't stay together. Mothers give your children to grandma. Why? We found out the hard way. As the twins, Mengeles was waiting for twins for experiments. And the mothers, the grandma would go to the gas chambers. So if the mother gave her child to grandma, the grandma's going to go to the gas chamber anyway. But now, if the mother holds the child, she will go to the gas chambers. So they tried saving lives by telling him to do this and do this and do this. Anyway, no, we didn't know where we were going.
How did you end up in the labor camp, Little Steve?
How good. In Auschwitz, besides an Albert Mark V, he told us that the two ways out of here, through the gas chambers or sold as a slave laborer. For $1 they could buy a slave laborer to do any work they needed. The lucky ones, at Auschwitz I was separated with my brothers, not a little more sure. Can I say they're dead? No. I never saw them again. I had no grave. And I can't find any traces no matter how much I search. It's just like this. Just to close it.
close to this.
Anyway. I was sent to the, of course, to the woman's side, and they were sent to the right side, to the left side. And the woman's side was separated again. The grandmas and the children and were. I was of walking age. I was 18 years old, so I was walking age. So I was lucky and shaved every head up and every piece of hair on my head. We got all our clothes. I'm sure when you saw the pictures, you can't imagine how it is when you see in person. And we were sent to a shower. And there actually was a little bit water after the shower. The hair was shaved. But people that were sent to guest chambers were sent to showers. They were told to put on their clothes immediately, German Pimpflichkeit. Neatly, so when you come out, you could take it out. Your clothes will have no problems finding it. And when they went into the gas chamber, in the world they didn't know it's a gas chamber, they wanted to go into the shower. And to close the doors, there were showers, but gas came out from the showers, and then they burned the body. We didn't know that because the lucky ones were sent to a shower, regular quick shower, and into big bars, 500 women into a bar. And there was a woman lying around in there, and was crying, "Your families are being murdered here." And I didn't believe it. I went over to her and said, "How can you say that? We smelled the smoke, and we saw the fire. How can you say that?" She went, "Why are you telling lies?" And I don't know if the woman, who she was, if she survived, but for some reason I feel guilty that I didn't believe it. Even when we were in the fire, and I still couldn't believe it. And anyway, I was the lucky one. And every morning, naked, you had to march from buyers to look over if there's enough flesh or if it's good for water to walk the neutral. So I was the lucky one, and I was sold for $1. How do I know for $1? There's so much German literature, so many documents. They wrote everything down. So if you could find out everything you want to find out, find the sources because it's all documented. So I was the lucky one because I sent to Mittelstein. And when we came into Mittelstein, we didn't know what the camp is there. What is it? We were 400 girls, and we didn't know where we were going, what factory, what we were going to do. Because we all had the factory, we were in shifts, to 2 shifts. So there was a shift going and coming. We went to the factory, we looked for chimneys. Just a few months ago, we didn't know what chimneys stand for. Now we knew what chimneys there has to be gas chimneys. There were no chimneys because they were using electric grills. And the foreman was German, and he looked us over and called each one of us separately to tell how to use those electric drills. And the first speech was, if you make a mistake, it's sabotage. You're all responsible for one another. We were always responsible. If one didn't stay right or didn't do anything according to the rule, everybody was punished. Their favorite punishment, taking away the bread. Now you die from hunger. There's no worse punishment. There's the beatings you get used to. Well, taking away the bread. That was the favorite punishment. And so he looked at me and said, how old are you, little girl? And I said, I was 80. No, you're 40. And he didn't know that I couldn't see the machine. But in Auschwitz I had glasses. I had to drop the glasses because I had to stop, drop everything, whatever you had. You're a reject. So he sent me to the corner there with the other girls, and there's rejects. And we thought we were going to be killed in here, because if you're not useful, there's no sense. Nothing to do. And then we went down to an underground shelter, thinking they're going to shoot us there. And we heard somebody speaking German with a French accent. And he said, Mademoiselles, you're not going to get shot in here. My comrades and I are building an underground tunnel for the Germans. And you'll be carrying out the dirt, the field beside you, beside you the buckets. And we put the dirt in the buckets, and you need the chain. And that's how I cut my hand in that black horse.
So a few days ago, we asked random students in Stony Brook University to write questions that they would like to ask a Holocaust survivor. I have couple of them here. The first one that someone asked was, what was your relationship with God like what was your relationship with God and Judaism before the Holocaust and then during the Holocaust?
Well, before I come from a secular Jewish home. We studied Jewish history, we learned Jewish history, and I still know the Jewish culture, but we didn't go to temple. But we observed on the holidays. I felt, I still do like this. I could be a good Jew without going to temple. Once you go to temple, it's the choice.
What was the kindest act you witnessed during the Holocaust?
The kindness part. My little brothers. I was sick, and I told you I could move, and while I was sick, so one little portion, besides bringing their food, they took a ration of bread, traded it on the black market. You couldn't sell it, you could just trade it. And came home one day with the tangerine and said, open your mouth. I said, why? Don't you trust me? Open your mouth. That's the youngest Muslim. And he put a piece of a tangerine in my mouth. How did you get it? Well, we traded it on the black market. We took the piece of bread. We would get a loaf of bread, so we were supposed to divide it. So we didn't keep control of who's what. So I didn't know what they take, what they didn't take. They took a piece of the bread and sold it, traded it for a tangerine. They thought that the tangerine will save my life. And that, if you know what hunger feels, I hope you never know what hunger feels. To take away a piece of bread to try to think that it's going to save your sister. And under those circumstances, that was the kindest. And there was another kind of the picture there is of Lord's Bridge, the Lord's Bridge. We call it a bridge. It was an overpass from one side to the other, because in the center, the Jews were not allowed to go through the center, so we had to have an overpass. We had to go to the factories, Bridleford. And there's this guard standing there, and every time somebody went, all the people who had to go to the morning and the night had to go by. But they took their life in their hands. Because when he was bored, he would start shooting. And when I got sick, I had a neighbor, simple, good-hearted person. he insisted he's going to bring me over that bridge to see a doctor. And that was not a dangerous and crazy in kind. Carrying me over his arm, a big drum, because I was falling like a balloon, to find a doctor. The doctor was helpless. He said, she needs food, she needs vitamins. So among all those horrible things that you hear of, there was a lot of acts of kindness, compassion, dedication to other people.
What was the darkest act you witnessed during the Holocaust?
What?
The darkest, the most you witnessed?
My mother's been roped for my life.
Did you believe that humanity could be so depraved?
Did anyone? No. No. We have to learn what hate and prejudice and indifference. Being indifferent is just as bad, what it does. We don't have to be tested to find out how it is. No. In one of my poems I had said, how could a nation, was it in modern Germany, a cultured nation, how could it do? That's the poem, Where's Justice? I wrote it in camp. After I saw what they did, I still ask why, how could they do that?
Do you know what happened to your family? I know you know what happened to you.
I know and I don't know. I know that my mother was turned into ashes. When more or less, 1942, in Homa. What happened to my other siblings? Why one died in the ghetto? It was all emotional, I don't know. I don't have a grave, I can't even say for sure that they did. That's a tragedy of the survivors, not having any grave. Because if you have a grave, you could go, you could scream and yell at the person, like it's their fault that they died. You could cry, you could laugh, but there's something, a sign, something to remind you that once they existed, we lived. If you have no grave, you just live with false hope. Sometimes you look at somebody, do I know this person? Maybe someone like that. It's been so many years. It happens quite often because the voice sometimes sounds familiar. Or you go somewhere, maybe someone will come up and say, oh, I met your family. So survivors still search and live with false hope.
How did you feel when you were liberated, and what did you think when you found out that the war was over?
I was liberated by sheer miracle. Any time that we could, because most of us understood German, or we worked in the factory, the foremen had newspapers, so we could peek and see headlines. And we heard if the news is good, of course we rejoiced. And the guards would say, don't rejoice, 1 minute before we die, you'll die. And they kept the words. It's just useless, needless killing, just because that's what they wanted to do, wanted to finish the job. I was driving out, and we were digging ditches for German soldiers to fight, to hide. I don't know what they were digging ditches for. And a German guard came on a motorbike, and he started yelling to the ones leading the columns. We didn't know which way we go because every time we're different places. He said, the Russians are right behind us. They had orders to take us to the woods and to shoot us. And they were arguing to follow orders or to save their lives. I guess eventually they decided their lives are more important. And they left us standing there. And we just stood there frozen, afraid to move. Maybe it's a trick. Maybe they want us to run and they're going to start shooting. And then one of the girls said, I heard them arguing. It's their life or our lives. We're alone, they're left. We had no place to go. We just went over the road with beautiful houses. They're still there, I'm sure. And we started knocking at those doors. And we pleaded from the camp, we don't want to do anything, we just want, they should open the doors and help us. We had no place to go. Nobody would open the door. And we went back to the camp because we had no place to go. We didn't rejoice that we're free, we had no place to go. And it really didn't make much of a difference. And in the camp, 5 Russian soldiers came in on horses. And one of them spoke Yiddish. And he asked in Yiddish, are there Jews in here? There were only girls there. Yes, we are Jewish girls. And he started crying. We were the first ones that he saw alive. And they went to Berlin. They accidentally found the camp because they were going chasing the Nazis towards Berlin. And we had no place to go, and we stayed in the camp there, hoping for transportation, for somebody to show us where to go, what to do. And we found a guard hiding. And all to the time when we were arguing and we were hoping and we were trying to get strength from one another, we kept on talking about revenge. The day will come, we'll take revenge. It kind of makes you strong, to think that you could be strong. And we found a guard hiding. And he was pleading not to turn them over to the Russians. He knew the Russians would kill him. And we just stood there, and one of the girls said, let God be his judge. And some people held on to their beliefs, others did not. They would let him go. We couldn't kill, we couldn't turn into animals as they did. And we let him go. Did we rejoice? Many times I ask other survivors, how did you feel when you were liberated? I think we were too numb to feel anything. And from the beginning we realized that we are alone. If we are alone, so what's the point of living? So there was nothing in it to rejoice. We started wandering the roads and asking, meeting other survivors, and always the same question. Where are you from? Did you see so-and-so?
How did you immigrate to the United States, and how did you end up on Long Island?
Well, it's interesting that, we learn about the Holocaust. We know a lot about the Holocaust. But do we know a lot about the displaced persons camps? 5 years after being liberated, I and thousands of others lived in displaced persons camps. We came back to Poland on foot. It took us 3 weeks to come back, and we couldn't stay in Poland because the Jews in Poland were being murdered again. And we had to smuggle our way out of Poland. And the borders were open. We could just walk in. Now we had to smuggle our way out of Poland. They didn't want us there, but they didn't want you to leave either. So we smuggled our way, of all places, back to Germany. The former concentration camps became displaced persons camps, DP camps. And for 5 years, the homeless, the displaced, lived in former camps, of course without guards, in supported by different world organizations and trying to start a new life. People were getting married while waiting for the countries to open the doors. We would spend the time studying the lines, looking at lists, which country will let you come in. And there were all different requirements, which in many cases they knew that a Jew cannot do because you have to be a farmer, and most of the Jews are born were not farmers. And we lived like this for 5 years in the displaced persons schools. The books about the camps, the films about the camps, the documentaries about the camps. It's interesting to take a look at it. The world, we were free, but we still weren't free. We had to live in different former concentration camps. But start a new life, that we wanted to live, we wanted to rebuild, because in honor of those who passed away, they couldn't just vanish. We survived. There must have been a purpose, a reason for it. So we survived, we started families, and we needed sponsors to give us to come into the countries. There was no Israel, well, it was illegal to go to Israel, and a lot of people who risked their lives with illegal ships to go to Israel. Some of them never made it, ended up in Cyprus, and the ones who made it rebuilt, started a new life there. Others went to different countries, whichever country opened the door for it. So we needed sponsors, and we found a sponsor, and I came to America. I was married and I had 2 small children.
When you talk to your grandchildren about your life, how is this experience like?
It was harder to talk to the children, and the children had less questions than the grandchildren do now. Now, I have great-grandchildren, and my children, which are now grown-ups, they have children and grandchildren. I had once asked my oldest son, I have only a few pictures of my family, which some of them are salvaged on books put together. So ghetto pictures come out through copies on books where I found it. And some of them were sent out from relatives from different countries. So I had only a few pictures which are still there hanging on the wall. And my son, my oldest son, told me, anytime I was going to, I asked, who were those people in the picture? Just a few pictures. You would start crying, and Daddy would get angry and made you cry. So I stopped asking. Grandchildren heard me speak at their schools, so that was easier for them. My great-grandchildren still hear me speak in their schools, and they read my books, so it's easier for them to ask questions, to get involved. One of my granddaughters had just presented to her English class one of my poems from the book Wilder is Life, A Message to Mama. And she interviewed me on film before she presented it to the class. And when she came into the class, she told me later, and I said, before I'm going to share the poem, I want to tell you that that specific person, the author, is my grandma. And your grandma? They're real? What a connection. So now, to them it was simple. She said, this is, with pride, this is my grandma. But my children, because it tried to protect us. So as far as questions, depends, I guess, the generation further down, further away from the issue, it seems to be easier for them to talk about it.
I'm myself a 3rd generation Holocaust survivor, and until to this day, my grandfather never talked to me. I had to go to other directions to learn about the Holocaust.
I'm going to a bar mitzvah in November. My first great-grandchild and my grandson's wife to marry, my granddaughter to marriage, is involved in education. She's a lawyer, but she's involved in Holocaust teaching. So she asked, while I'm there for the bar mitzvah, could I come a little early and speak to the students of her class? Every time they get me somewhere, they feel very comfortable to push me in there and talk.
Oh, you're a good speaker. And in light of the anti-Semitic shooting in San Diego that happened almost a week ago, and the Pittsburgh shooting that happened about 6 months ago, as well as the rise in neo-Nazi organizations, do you see any parallels between Poland before and during the Nazi occupation and America of today?
Yeah. Like I said, Poland, the Jews in Poland, it's far away from us. We're okay, we're safe. Not this far away from you. Don't be silent. Hate and prejudice and indifference are crimes. Hate could be taught. I saw how hate could be taught, how good people could be changed to bad people, to cold-blooded killers. Don't be silent. Being silent is a terrible crime. It's scary. Yeah.
You kind of answered the next question, but maybe you can... so the question is, when you see anti-Semitism today, how do you feel? And what do you feel is our responsibility to respond to anti-Semitism?
Like I just said, it's scary, but turning the other cheek doesn't work. Don't be quiet, don't be silent. Speak up.
In the Jewish community, we speak about the never forget, never again. What does that statement mean to you?
To me, I just said before, we're talking about Yom HaShoah. Yom HaShoah is for me the whole year long. It's not one specific day. We can't forget, and we mustn't forget. Forgive depends who you have to forgive and what you have to forgive. But don't be indifferent.
Unfortunately, we know that genocides are still happening today. What do you think is our responsibility to the victims of these crimes, and how does that play in with the concept of never again?
Well, I think the never again has nothing to do with the responsibility of if you see somebody hurt, you want to help him. You don't care who he is or where he came from. You have to help him. And by turning away, it's not me. It could always be you. So don't think because it happens someplace else, it cannot happen here. It could happen here, it could happen any place. I think we should help wherever we could help. Maybe that's where we'll protect it, that history can't repeat itself.
So you think that the Holocaust can happen again?
Oh yes, yes. It scared me when I saw lately what's happening, and there's our leader says that good people and bad people are on both sides. That doesn't protect anybody.
America today is extremely polarized, and people are targeted because of their differences. What would you say to people who claim to be more American because of their religion, appearance, and other factors?
Many people said it before me, that we all came from somewhere, and they just want to hide whatever they do with bad deeds behind some of their own justifications.
I'll do one more question and then we'll take a couple of questions. As college students, we recognize that we are the last generation to hear first-hand accounts of survivors. What do you think will happen to the memory of the Holocaust in a world without survivors?
It's a tough question for me to answer. To think of me, I won't be here. I can't take it that way. I hope that you are the future leaders, that you take over the memory in the stand guard against injustice, and that we will have a better world than you came into.
I think I will take questions now. Anyone has a question?
Thank you. I just wondered how the United States responded and helped you when you were liberated. Did they pretend that they didn't know? Or did they try to have you come here to the United States? Was it very difficult to be accepted?
Yes. I needed a sponsor, otherwise you couldn't have come. I needed somebody to pay the expenses and somebody to guarantee that you won't become a burden to the government. And that took 5 years. And then to go through the different, I wouldn't use selection is what we use for the Germans, for the different interviews. And we went to one of the interviews and the interviewer asked me, were you a prostitute? I looked at him. Were you a Nazi? He asked such horrible, painful questions, and then he apologized. We have to do that because some Nazis tattoo their arms and pretend that they are survivors. So we have to, according to him, that's why they have to do all that painful interview, which didn't make sense. We looked at the person with the number and asked, are you a Nazi or are you a Jew? But finally, when I came to America, after 5 years waiting and going painful medical things, it was very, very long and painful. I wanted to tell the people who sponsored me in Boston. They were very kind and loving. We found a family to a newspaper that my husband had some relatives to the newspaper we placed it, and they sponsored us. They were very warm and loving people. And I wanted to share, to start telling what we went through. And they mean it quite well. They didn't mean to hurt me. They would say, don't talk about it. If you don't talk about it, it'll go away. Forget about it. Don't talk, don't talk. And it started me, but I stopped talking. And then I realized, longer we don't talk, less it becomes, well, it never happened, look at them, they're normal, they have children, they have lives. So, they meant well. But we shouldn't have stopped talking. And a lot of people did stop and did never talk because they were afraid either they won't believe me or that they don't want to hear. To this day, I know people, happen to be Jewish people, that when I want to talk about the Holocaust, oh, go to the children, tell the children. Oh, we heard enough, we heard enough. Why just the children, why not children? It wasn't easy, but we built a new life, and we hope that the world will learn something from the past. Not to be silent, not to be silent.
First off, thank you so much for coming. I was wondering, when did you find out that 6 million Jews were killed? And I was wondering what your reaction was, and did you believe that the extent of the destruction had been that great?
You can't talk about numbers. I just know my family's my friend. I graduated with the class, I went to a private Jewish school with 27 graduates. Only 2 survived. My teachers didn't survive. My family, my cousins, my uncles, my neighbors. I don't care about numbers, not that I don't care. but numbers don't mean anything. Think of the people and then try total, just becomes a number. When did I find out about the numbers, millions? I think years later. I never looked at how many millions. I just know that 10% of Polish Jews only survived. So most of the people that I knew didn't make it.
Hi. First of all, I want to say again, Peter over there, thank you so much for coming out today. And I realize that this is a very difficult topic for you to go through, to relive all this every time you speak. And I'd like to ask you, in the years following your experiences, and even today, can I ask what gave you hope then, and what gives you hope now?
What gave me hope during the Holocaust, and to this day, it's still a hold on. As long as there's life, there is hope. Those were my mother's words. She would say it in Yiddish. Solange lebt ist der Hoffnung. And many a times when things get so bleak that I was wondering what's the use, I could hear her voice. As long as there's life, there is hope. And to this day, when you have tough days, health problems or whatever, I still hold on to those words. And I think those words really helped a lot when I shared my poems with the other girls, because it gave us something to hold on to believe that this will end, the world will be different. And the people imagine, because when we survive the camps, the world will be so glad to see us. They were just ignored. And you had to start building everything on your own, by yourself. That's why a lot of groups formed, societies, at least you were people that you know and you have common goals.
Again, thank you for coming to the program. And I'm just wondering, after you survived your whole ordeal, do you still get flashbacks?
Good one.
Do you get flashbacks?
Absolutely.
And
I get nightmares which I can't control every night.
And when you get those flashbacks, how do you handle it?
I don't know how it depends on the days of what my flashback is. Is there anything I could have done? No.
Hi. So my question to you is kind of expanding upon Alona's question. As you know, I plan to have kids, and likely that'll happen in 10 years or so, and maybe there won't be as many Holocaust survivors around. What do you think the best way is to educate them when there are no survivors to learn from?
Well, the second generations, the children and the grandchildren, the future generations, I'm sure some of them will pass on what they learned, what they heard, what they learned, because some of them didn't learn very much from their families, which is too painful. I never sat at a table with my family and say, okay, let's talk about the Holocaust. That never happened. They only learned that I read my articles, they read my books, and my grandchildren are fortunate that they heard me here in their schools all over the country where I traveled. So, but not all the children had that chance, and not all could speak, because my late husband was a survivor, and he spent 2 years in Auschwitz, but he never spoke. And sometimes when we sit at the table, and when he said a word, he said, let's, he stopped quickly. He didn't talk, he would start crying. I was once speaking at the diocese, the Rockland diocese, and they had the Catholic diocese, they had a newspaper reporter from the diocese. And I was on the stage and he was always sitting in the back. And I saw that the man was talking to him and I could see that my husband was getting upset. So I asked him later what happened. He wanted to know about Auschwitz. So he walked up and could talk about it. So not everybody could talk about it. And I guess the future generations will have to learn from what they learned from the first person stories. Because other books, people just some twist history, but the first person stories are the stories of those who lived through it. So they're going to have to learn from them.
Mrs. Sender. My name is Rahul. I'm an undergrad here, and thank you so much for coming out and talking about the experiences, which I can only imagine how great they can be. As this is okay. So recently, I came across a lecture by a prominent. I'm an international student from India. I should probably give that background. And there was this one mystic from India who actually was posed this question in a university: if there was time travel that was possible right now, and you as a survivor, if you had the ability to go back in time and have the opportunity of averting this entire disaster in terms of seeing baby Hitler in front of you, what would you do in that situation? And I apologize if this sounds like a really naive question, but the answer that followed through after that mystic said that was somehow, I wouldn't say out of any biased opinion, but at the same time I couldn't accept the answer that he gave me, that he was given. So I just wanted to ask your opinion as someone who has been through that experience and our history personified sitting right in front of us.
I could just tell you that you don't know what you would do under what circumstances. I saw people that were leaders and we expected to do the right thing to be leaders. They became cowards. And people that were just simple walking people, they became heroes. You don't know, you don't plan to be a coward, you don't plan to be a hero. It just happens in circumstances, so who could predict those circumstances? I could sit here and say, well, I would do this, I would kill him. I found out that I couldn't kill. So whatever you think you would do, it's just that you're thinking, but you don't know what you're doing.
Thank you.
One last question.
I'm going by the order that I saw hands.
I know it's gratuitous, but thank you for being here. Oh, closer? Okay. Again, thank you for being here. I have two questions, actually. My first is, My first is, what happened to your friend Harry? And my second question is, after your experiences in the Holocaust, did you find yourself being more religious or less religious?
What happened to your friend Harry?
After liberation, I came back to Lodge. And some people, I went back to the old neighborhood, which were not Jews there anymore. And some people told me that Mrs. Gruber, Haas' grandmother, had, when they formed the ghetto, of course she didn't live in that area anymore. She moved like we lived from Harlem to Park Avenue. She moved into a Jewish home. People were thrown out in gunpoint, but she just moved in and took over, and she lived there. So they said they would go to her and claim whatever she robbed them of while the ghetto was being formed. I didn't want to go there, but they came back and they told me that she told them that Harry died on a German front when he was 18 years old. I don't know if he volunteered or if he was drafted. I just, in my heart, I hope that he didn't volunteer, that maybe he was drafted. But he died at age 18. on the German front.
Before we end, I would like to end with a poem that Ruth wrote. The poem is A Message from Mama.
I have to say something about that poem. That's the poem that actually saved my life. Because after I had a blood poisoning and to sheer miracles, we had a lady medical students to ask was she a doctor, but there's nothing she could have done for us. The sick room was a sack of straw in a little corner there. And anyway, she tried to perform surgery in gangrene setting. So she knew that I was dying, and she had a lot of guts. And she went to the commandant, which was the most vicious woman you ever had the displeasure to meet. And she told her, there's a girl named Reva, and she writes poetry. I wrote on scraps of paper that the girls stole from the garbage with a stone piece of pencil, and secretly we read the poems to them. She writes poetry, and first of all, named Reva. We had no names, and that poetry helps the girls hold on to life. So it's up to you. You have to take it to a hospital, or she's going to die here. So what's the big thing? Another Jew will die here? What she told the commandant, she had a lot of guts to say it. She said that camp, as long as the girls hold on to hope, thanks to her poems, they hold on to hope. And if they hold on to hope, they're able to work. And as long as they work, you have a camp. If they can't work, if the camp falls apart, you'll be sent to the Russian front. That was their boogie, the Russian front. And the commandant had sent me to the hospital, and sheer miracles again. My finger is stiff when I go like this, it doesn't move. But my hand survived, and I survived. And then was a Christmas vacation for them. In fact, they were closed for 3 days, and the guards were bored, didn't know what to do. If they were bored, they gave more punishments. So they decided we have 400 parasites. That's what we were to do. Let them entertain us. And the doctor, we called the doctor, came in and said, we have to put on a show. Can you feel strong enough to go in and recite your poems? Yiddish is similar to German. And so when I recited one poem, The Stone Underground Shelter, and I said in the poem that the day will come, we'll take revenge. The girls turned green, the guards looked around, the commandant didn't say anything. Because the commandant kind of got to know of me from what the doctor told her. So she was sending sugar to me when I was after the operation because there was no medicine. So now she didn't say anything. And then I recited a message to Mama, sending a message of hope to my Mama. At that time I still believed that I have a Mama. And I fainted. They had to take me back to the sick room, and the commandant came running with her hands. She had a military coat on, and she had her hands in her pockets. And she looked at me, what should I do? I spoke German. What should I do with you? What would I tell her? She's going to do what I want. Then she says, I thought we killed all the emotions in you. All you could think of is fressen. Fressen is a crude way of stuffing your stomach. But still, you still hope. You send a message of hope to your mother. And I think it was Christmas, because she remembered she had a mother. And she took out from her pocket a little notebook, a little notepad, and tossed it at me and says, here, you could write your poetry. And later she sent in another booklet, in the scraps of paper, we all kept on hiding those scraps of paper, so now I rewrote it in those booklets, in copies of the photocopies of the booklet survived with me. Is in the book While There Is Life, the book of poetry. So that's why I say I survived because of the poetry, because this somehow it get into her head that the camp will be saved if she has a camp. And then when she heard me speak that poem, I must have been Christmas spirit. And now we could say the message.
Did you start the message for Mama?
Okay. Blue little clouds floating so free. Would you please carry a message for me if on your journey you happen to see my mother?
Tired, weary, left all alone, torn from her children, filled with sorrow and pain. Please, gently touch her. Please, gently kiss her. Bring her my love. Tell her how I miss her. Feel her pain, feel her sorrow. Please tell her, my friends, she must live for tomorrow. If you see her tears, please wipe them. Tell her, soon, soon will come the day when together again,
Mother and children and family,
all free. Mama, dear Mama, please whisper for me. Today will vanish, believe. Soon your empty arms, your children will feel. The sorrow will turn to joy. Tomorrow is near. Dear Mama, please live. Be strong. We'll weather the storm. We'll find you, dear Mama. Please, do not despair. We will live. We will live to be free.
One more poem. Why? The Yiddish word for why is Barbaros. I wrote it February 14, 1945. I was 90 years old. All alone, I stare at the window, feeling my soul in me cry. Hearing the painful screams of my heart, calling silently, why? Why are your dreams scattered, destroyed? Why are you put in this cage? Why is the world silently watching? Why can't they hear your rage? Why is the barbed wire holding me prisoner? Blocking the freedom my way. Why do I still keep waiting, hoping, dreaming? Maybe someday I see above me snow-covered mountains, majestic, proud, and high. If like a free bird I could reach the peaks, maybe from there the world would hear my cry, why? Please don't stop asking why. Thank you.
My name is Ilona Feather and Ruth Minsky Sender. Thank you for being such an inspiration to us all. Thank you for not giving up on life, and for being such a role model and an educator. The cage is going to be sold now and signed by Ruth. Ruth, I cannot thank you again. Thank you for coming here.
Hi everybody, real quick. This is the last program of our three-part series of Hitler Tried to Kill Me, I Survived. if anybody's interested in getting more involved with Holocaust programming or genocide awareness programming, please come see me at the end of the program. I'm happy to take your information. We're going to start another cohort of students that want to plan next year's programs. So if you want to get involved, now's your opportunity.
Thank you.
That was awesome.